continue this Pat Nixon Day of Service, and we honor and celebrate the magnificent First Lady Pat Nixon. And you learned a little bit from this video here about why we celebrate Pat Nixon year in and year out here at the Nixon Library on her birthday. That film was actually narrated by Jenny Eisenhower, who is the granddaughter of President and Mrs. Nixon and the great-granddaughter of President and Mrs. Eisenhower. And you could look up how that family came together, two presidential families. But now we're gonna, you're in for a real treat because we are going to have a Q&A with Mrs. Nixon herself, a historical portrayal done by Nixon Foundation board member and longtime friend of the Nixon Foundation and the Nixon family, Maureen Nunn. And Maureen is going to be interviewed, Mrs. Nixon is going to be interviewed by our friend and longtime docent volunteer here at the Nixon Library, Cindy Scott. So you're all in for a real treat, and you're about to learn even more about Mrs. Nixon and maybe even ask her a question or two. So Mrs. Nixon, welcome, and Cindy Scott, please give them a round of applause. Thank you all, and enjoy this presentation.
Well, good morning, Mrs. Nixon. And first of all, a happy 114th birthday. So I must say, I hope I look as good as you when I turn 114 years old.
It's a lot of smokes and mirrors and makeup and hairdos and anyway, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for coming today. What a great celebration. And thank you to the people who made it possible. Joe Lopez, who's our executive director of the Nixon Library, Chris Nordyke, who is in charge of the affairs here and external affairs as well. I want to thank our sound group too, because I didn't have a microphone, so thank you very much for the sound and for everybody for being here today. Okay, here we go.
Before we get started, I just want to let everybody know we are at the Richard Nixon Presidential Library, and we're in the East Room today, which is an exact replica of the East Room that's in the White House today, only this room here is a bit larger. And of course, Richard Nixon was our 37th president, and he was born right here in Yorba Linda, and his house is actually here at this library. So I would like to encourage everyone to come visit the Richard Nixon Presidential Library. So let's get started, Mrs. Nixon. Many have heard stories about you as First Lady, but not much about your early childhood and your early years. Will you please tell us about your early life, and what was it like to lose both your parents at the age of 18 years old?
Yes, you saw the incredible documentary that was put together, so you learned a lot actually about me. But there's a lot of details that come in between what you saw on the great documentary that actually Melanie Eisenhower narrated. It was so well done. So we'd like to do this interview for some period of time, and then afterwards we welcome any of your questions, any and all of your questions. Even when I fed my dog, I don't care what you ask him, it'll be fine. Okay, so going back to the very early years, as Cindy said, I was born very close to midnight on St. Patrick's Day. I was born in Ely, Nevada, so I'm gonna ask a lot of questions. Any of you here been to Ely, Nevada? Oh my goodness. Wow, okay, we're off to a roll here. I was born very close to midnight, March 16th, and we had no indoor plumbing, and we had no indoor electricity. Can anybody relate to that? I don't think anybody's here old enough for that. So when I was born, my dad, whose name was Will, and had come from Ireland, he wanted to name me his St. Patrick's Babe in the morning. My mother's name was Thelma, and she was from Germany, and she was very direct. we say, and she wanted to name me Thelma. So guess who ruled out? My mother, Kate. So my birth name was Thelma Catherine Ryan. And my dad was, so those were the very, very early days, and when I was 2.5, my dad got really tired. He was a copper miner, and he got really tired of it. Anybody here a copper miner? Okay, praise God. Anyway, he decided that he wanted to move from Ely, Nevada to Cerritos, Artesia area, and actually try to use his hands for gardening. And so that's what he did. We moved here when I was 2 years old, my brother, myself, and we started farming. My dad, Will, grew the biggest cabbages that you've ever seen. Anybody grow cabbages here? Tomatoes, zucchini, corn. And he had what's called a truck farm. So he put all of the produce on the truck, and he would go around to the different places and sell all of his produce off the truck. Well, let's fast forward to high school. I went to Excelsior High School. Anybody go to Excelsior High School? Oh, wow, okay, good for you. Thank you. So in high school, when I was a freshman, I was 13 years old, my mother started coughing, and badly. She couldn't get out of bed. And my mother was tough, and she was strong, and she was always up first thing in the morning, and she started coughing so badly that my brother and I knew that something was wrong. So we said, Mom, you've got to go to the doctor. You know how mothers are. Oh, it'll be fine tomorrow. I'll use some of these potions that I have, and I'll be fine. Well, by the time she got to the doctor, she had full-blown Bright's disease. Anybody know what that is? Bright's disease. Yes, thank you. It's a kidney disease. And so she actually died a month later. And then, it was really tough. Anybody lost your mom at a very early age? Yes, it's really tough. We took over all the farm. I did the housework, the cooking, the cleaning, the ironing, and we made it work. We worked hard. We took what we were doing very seriously, but we didn't take ourselves that seriously. So we managed on. But then when I was a senior in high school, my dad started coughing. And you know how dads are, the same as mothers. It'll be better. I'll go to the doctor. I'll get rid of it. It'll be fine. Don't worry. Well, by the time he got to the doctor, he had full-blown tuberculosis. And he died a month later. So here I am, 17 years old. My brother, Bill, we were orphans. What did we do? Well, we knew that all of us, there were actually 4 of us. My mother had been married before to a man, and he died in a flash flood. And she had 2 children, a son and a daughter from that first marriage. And then the second marriage, she had a son and a daughter, me and my brother. So we all knew we wanted to go to college, but we didn't have any money. We had hardly any money. So we worked hard at odd jobs. And you saw from the documentary that we did so many things. We worked as janitors. We helped grade papers. We did anything and everything to possibly earn that money. And my brother got a scholarship to USC. Anybody here from USC? Go Trojans, all right. Okay, so that's how we first started out. Those were the early beginnings, and that was what I did actually when I was an orphan with my sister and my 2 brothers. Okay.
Thank you.
You've been to a lot of Ely, my goodness, electricity. Okay.
Now, you've always seemed to work really hard at your education. You attended Fullerton Junior College, and of course got a scholarship to USC. You went through so many obstacles, as you were talking about, during your younger years. What kept you going to finish your education?
That's a really good question. I think because my parents had both died, and I saw them work so hard, I think that the work ethic, the commitment to a purpose, of not just being lazy and not doing hardly anything, I saw them work so hard and die so young. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to work so hard and then die so young, but I think their ethic really taught me those early life lessons, to do something, to work hard. How many of you are gardeners in here? I didn't ask. Oh, a lot of you are. Good for you. So you know that plant that you're planting requires work. If you don't give it water and sunlight and you just ignore it, it's going to die. So I learned those lessons very on, and I think that's really what kept me going in spite of those big tragedies.
Now, I'd like to ask you a personal question, which I hope you don't mind answering. What made you fall in love with Richard Nixon? And what did you think, and someday did you think he might be President of the United States?
You know, I love the fact that the documentary did not include this, because I can tell you. So what I meant, so I majored at USC, I majored in, well, first of all, I got a scholarship to USC. I worked hard, got a scholarship. And at USC, I majored in merchandising. Anybody major in merchandising? And education. Because I loved, first of all, I loved selling things. And I was really good at the truck farm, selling all those things. And then also, the teachers that I had were so incredible. They were so amazingly incredible. Having lost both parents, I would sit in class and I would fall asleep because the life was rugged. I hardly got a lot of sleep. But the teachers were so incredibly supportive, and they realized what I had gone through. So I wanted to be a teacher. Sell cabbages, be a teacher. How's that? You walk into class and I'm selling produce and I'm your teacher. So anyway, I got a teaching position at Whittier High School. And I met my best friend in life. Her name was Helene Drown. She was teaching there, I was teaching. Anybody taught and been best friends with a colleague? Good for you, good for you. Yes, so she remained my lifelong friend. Anyway, we did all kinds of things from teaching. I was teaching, remember back, shorthand, filing, typing, all those types of things. And Helene was teaching English. And we were really peppy. We were the support team for the football team, and we got the cheers out. And anybody do that, cheerleading and high school? And good for you. It's fun, isn't it? Yes. Okay, so the principal of our school came to me and said to me, Pat, oh, by the way, I changed my name from Thelma in honor of my dad to Pat. And I like the name Pat. Anybody here named Thelma? I like your name too, but I like Pat. I like that. So anyway, the principal came to me and said, you know, there's a community theater and they're auditioning for a murder mystery, and it's called The Dark Tower. And I thought, wow, The Dark Tower, it sounds like a murder mystery. So I went in and auditioned, and I didn't know this, but a young attorney who had come into town, his boss said to him, Dick, I'd like you to go audition for The Dark, because he knew that he'd also done some community theater, some things in high school. Okay, so fast forward to the play, The Dark Tower, and indeed it was a murder mystery. I didn't get killed, but it was a fun thing. So I'd spent some time with Dick, and he was telling me over coffee about how he wanted to make a difference in his family, in his community, in his city. And I thought, that's great, good luck. Well, when the play ended, you could imagine that we were all leaving. We had a wonderful ending for the play. Anybody do community theater in here? Good for you, awesome. Okay, so we finished the play, we were walking out, and he held the door open for me like this, and he stood right there at the door, and he stared at me, and he said, you may not know this, but someday I'm going to marry you. Anybody have that happened? Well, you can imagine what I was thinking. I thought he was nice looking, he was, and he told me about all the places he wanted to go. I had no interest in him as far as just being in a play with him. So he wouldn't give up. Now, I had dates with other men, and I didn't have a car. So he found out where I was going on my dates. He picked me up at my house, and he drove me to my date's house. And then he waited for me when I went on my date, and then he picked me up, and he brought me home. And then he wrote me the most beautiful, beautiful love letters, poems. Oh my gosh, they're here in the Nixon Library. You just can't even imagine. And guess what? I was falling in love with him. I was falling in love with him. It wasn't easy. He courted me for 2 years, driving back and forth to my dates' houses and whatever, and listening to my date, where I went to the theater, out to dinner, and what I ate, and all this kind of stuff. And so one night he said, Pat, let's go for a ride. So I said, sure. Pick me up, drive me to Dana Point. And Dana Point, June 21st, 1940, guess what? He proposed. He asked me to marry him. There was no ring. What? Yes, I said, of course, yes. And I was looking in the car around, and it's down below, and I thought there's no ring, but I said yes. So he didn't say anything except for the next date. He had a basket of flowers in the back seat of the car. And on one of the flowers, he had tied the engagement ring. So I had an official engagement ring. And that's how I met him, and a wonderful, wonderful man.
I love that story. It's a great story. Now, nowadays, campaigns start so early. You see ads on TV for the governor or a local position someone's running for. How did you endure those campaigns with the early years of Richard Nixon? Tell us about your packing trips also, and how did you stay connected to Julie and Tricia and your family? Technology was so different at that time. You know, you didn't have cell phones.
We didn't even have a microphone. Well, we hardly had a microphone, but yes, we were called the Dream Team. We were called Teamwork, because might as well call us the Dream Team too in this day and age. So because, as you know, my husband ran for Congress and won, Senate won, Vice President elected twice, presidency lost to John Kennedy by just a hair, probably a fingernail, and then was elected president in 1968, and I campaigned with him all the way. If any of you have been on a campaign, I see there's mayors and there's city council people here that I've met. You know what a campaign is. It costs money, and you have to go door to door. So back in the day, we went through neighborhoods, knocking on doors. Can I knock on this? Knock on a door, and guess what? The people actually opened the door and said, what are you here for? And we told them that we were here because my husband was running for Congress or Senate or Vice President, or rather President. And they invited us in. Come on in. Sit down. Would you like coffee and some cookies? And it's a miracle I didn't gain like 20 pounds going door to door. But it was wonderful because people really listened, and you could communicate, and they could meet the candidate or the candidate's wife. My wonderful friend Helene Drown, her husband's name was Jack, he was in charge of what, maybe you've heard of this, are called whistle stops. So they actually went on a train through the different communities, and then my dad would blow a whistle, and that would actually notify the people in the city that there was a train and that Dick Nixon was running for a particular office, and he was on the train, and you could meet him, and he gave a speech. These are called whistle stops. So we did all that. Okay, the trips, when we were vice president, President Eisenhower was really awesome. Thank you. He really was. So he said to Dick and to me, he said, I want you to go on an ambassador trip. I want you to go to 53 countries in 10 weeks all through Asia, and I want you to be the ambassadors. And the reason was because the people in those countries had never met Americans. And with a handshake, you know you can do so much. That is really the token of love, appreciation, and friendship. My hand, people ask me how in the world I didn't break my hand, but I have a real secret handshake. I actually extend my hand like that, they grasp it, and they don't crush it, because I don't have really big bones. So that's how we did that. Also preparing for a trip. Okay, we were gone for 10 weeks, 53 countries. And what I learned was that polyester, which I'm wearing today, it doesn't wrinkle. So what I would do was I would buy polyester clothes, I would put them in a suitcase, then I would lay tissue paper over them. Anybody do this? And then you put another article of clothing like this jacket and put another layer of tissue paper on top of that. So that actually when you were at many countries, taking clothes out, hanging them up, so that's the strategy we used then. It was a wonderful thing. The hardest thing was that our daughters were little then. Tricia was 6 and Julie was 4. And leaving those children for 10 weeks without any phone, without any technology, was really, really hard. How did we keep in touch? Postcards and letters. And one story that I have is, we were gone for such a long period of time. Maybe you already know this about my husband. He was one of 5 brothers. And by the time he was 26 years old, 3 of his brothers had passed away. So he really had endured things. And you know, with both of my parents dying at an early age too. So we went, and so Frank and Hannah Nixon, the parents of my husband, they never had a daughter. They had 5 sons. So when we went on these trips, they got to be grandparents to little granddaughters. We came home and there were curls in their hair and ribbons and bows and Teflon skirts and everything else. I think one of the sad things was that we were gone for such a long period of time that one night Tricia came into the bedroom and it was dark. And she thought, she rubbed her hand on her grandmother's face, on Hannah's face, and said, "Mom, I'm so glad you're home." And I hadn't come home yet. So those are some of the inside stories that, you know, that really showed what kind of a person she was. She was an incredible mother, and really just tried to keep in touch. I tried to keep in touch the best I could with postcards and letters, and then just making sure that their homework was done, and those types of things.
Thank
Good
you.
question, Cindy.
Now, the video was shown about Pat Nixon, and on May 31st, 1970, a devastating earthquake hit Peru. And Lieutenant Colonel Gene Boyer, who was President Nixon's command pilot at the time, said it was the most horrifying trip that he had ever taken, a flight, to take you to a site. And there's a very famous photo of you wearing a light blue suit, standing in the midst of earthquake rubble, along with the First Lady of Peru. So can you tell us about that trip and how it felt like bringing all that relief and tons of help to the country? Well, and let me mention one other thing, because this is very important. You received the highest honor and award ever given to the Americas, which I believe was called the Grand, let me see if we can get this right. It is the Grand Cross of the Order of the Sun, which was the highest award ever given to anybody in the Americas. So please, tell us about that trip, how it felt to be amongst those people.
Well, first of all, I'd like to ask, is anybody in this room from Peru? Or does anybody have any relatives in Peru? Sometimes there are. Okay, so in 1970, it was our anniversary, and after dinner, I always like to watch the news, just catch up on what was going on in the world, just really quick news. But when I turned on the television that night and saw this incredible disaster, so it was a 7.9 earthquake. I think that's really like that. You don't want to be around when that happens. 80,000 people died. 80,000 people died. I live close by here, and it's 80,000 would take out our whole community. And then, so what happened was, I said to Dick, I said, we've got to do something. We've got to do something. And he said, I will give you 2 planes filled with all kinds of materials, with everything from flashlights to blankets to medical things, every single thing you need, and just go. So I left 3 weeks later, by the time we got all the planes filled up with the supplies and everything. So I arrived in Peru, and I joined the First Lady. Her name was Consuelo. We became Good to meet you, Consuelo. Good to meet you, Pat. And we started off walking through the rubble, the bricks. And I didn't even have time to change from the airport to the hotel to meeting her. So you'll see me in a blue suit with high heels on, walking through the bricks. It was not a staged photo. Some people might think, oh, well, she just did that and posed there. No, we were actually walking up that hill to places where the people who had really suffered the most damage couldn't get any supplies, and we brought the supplies to them. That's all I did. And when they gave me this Grand Order of the Sun, I was so grateful, but I thought, I think that the First Lady of Peru should have gotten that, because she was just the inspiration. And we actually went to a lot of places. Anybody here been in an earthquake? Oh my God, oh my goodness, you stand up, everybody in the room. My golly. So you know, yeah. Wow. I just have to stop for a moment. That was most of the room. For heaven's sake. Wow. Oh my goodness. I've asked that question on many times, and just a few people have raised their hands, so I just had to stop and process what I just saw. That's incredible. So you know what it's like. It can do severe damage. For 80,000 people dying was almost to take out a whole city. That happened in 1970. Some of those parts that I've heard are still not reconstructed because it took a lot of money, and you know what happens when money kind of goes and maybe doesn't get in the right hand and whatever. But it was an incredible trip. We did a lot of really good humanitarian things. Thank you for that question.
Well, one of President Nixon's greatest accomplishments was, of course, opening communications with China, ending the Vietnam War. How did you spend your time? Because I know you took letters to wounded soldiers, took letters to their families. What was the biggest takeaway that you had from your trip to China?
Well, I think the Vietnam War, did anybody in this room serve in Vietnam? Oh, stand up, sir. Stand up. Thank you so much for your service. Anybody here, Air Force, Marines, Navy, Coast Guard, please stand up. Please stand up. Thank you a million times for your service. I'm a much better person for seeing you and knowing you, a much better person. You kept our country free so that we could do our own thinking, and God bless you. Thank you so much. So I did go to Vietnam, and I did go into a war zone. I really wanted to meet with the troops, and they looked at me and they said, Mrs. Nixon, really, you do it? I said a very loud yes. And they didn't argue with me. So they said, but all we have is a helicopter. That's fine, I'll go on a helicopter. But Mrs. Nixon, the helicopter doesn't have a door. That's fine. I grew up on a farm. I know what no doors look like. So they indulged me, and I actually went to Vietnam in a helicopter with an open door into the combat zone. And because I really wanted to visit the wounded, I did. It wasn't for everybody. Hardly anybody from America except for the military had gone there, but I really wanted to go, and I visited them, and I sat by the sides of their bed, and I said to them, what is your name? First of all, I said, thank you for your service, and I gave them a huge hug. I said, thank you so much for your service, for keeping our country free. I need to have your parents' name or your loved ones or your first phone number or your address. And I promise when I get home that I will contact every single person that I met in Vietnam, and I did. And when I had to really gear up because I was about ready to cry on the phone and saying that I just met your wonderful son and daughter, who is going to be fine and will be coming home. And you should have heard, oh my gosh, I had to have a box of Kleenex at my side because The tears of joy were just, to this day, I can remember every single one of them. So, yes, to Vietnam. And then you asked about China.
Well,
the
first,
takeaway.
I did, but let's talk about the pandas.
Okay.
Everybody knows the panda story, I think, or have heard about the pandas at the National Zoo, but so many stories actually circulate about how the pandas came to our country. So could you tell us the real story about the pandas?
The real story about the Dark Tower and the real story. Okay. So in 1972, Kissinger had been writing letters back and forth to China because China at that time was actually making nicely handshakes to Russians. For what? To get together. They would be two superpowers, and the damage that they could do would be more than an earthquake. So Kissinger was writing letters, said to my husband, Dick and Pat, I think you should go to China. Nobody had been in China since 1949. This was 1972. A long time had passed. And we said, yes, we'll go. And so I bought a red coat, which symbolizes courage, and it's the Chinese color as well. Good strategy, right? Shake the hand with the red coat on. Haven't been here for 29 years. So anyway, how many of you have been to China? Oh my goodness, that's about out there with the earthquake. A lot. Okay, so you know how vast it is. It's just huge. And that was the thing that really encaptured me, was this vastness of this country. And if you've been on which you have been on the wall, the Great Wall of China, I think it's the only thing that can be actually seen from the moon is the Great Wall. Am I right? I like to keep my facts kind of straight. Okay, so I wanted to visit the hospitals, acupuncture. I wanted to visit the schools where the children were adorable. They would sit, stand, sing American songs, and they were so adorable. They had little pigtails, and they were just so sweet, and they all hugged me. And then I went to see an open heart operation. Anybody seen that with acupuncture? They said to me, okay, Mrs. Nixon, you don't throw up and you don't pass out. You watch the operation. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I promise. So we came back in the evening for dinner, and Zhao and Lai asked me, so Mrs. Nixon, how you enjoy your day? And I said, it was wonderful. I went to the hospitals, the clinics, and of course the pandas, which I saw. Well, on the table, right here, on the table was a package of cigarettes with two pandas on the cover. So he picks them up, and he says to me, Mrs. Nixon, would you like a panda? And I looked at him and I said, well, thank you very much, but I would like a real one. He said, okay, you have panda, you have two. You have two panda. I'm sorry for my imitation of the language because they spoke beautiful English, really they did. So, where do you want the pandas to go? To the Washington Zoo. 2 months later, Zing Zing and Ling Ling arrive at the Washington Zoo. Anybody seen the pandas? Yes. And they're here too. San Diego Zoo. Yes. Anybody seen the zoos in Washington? Oh, wow. Good for you. Yes. Thank you. Never saw anybody raise their hand that they've been to the Washington Zoo and seen the pandas. Oh, 2 people. Okay, great. So they came when they were really little, and they lived to be 23. Ling Ling lived to be 23, and Sing Sing lived to be 28. And they came, this is the thing, they came in bamboo crates. Now, you know pandas love bamboo. So I said to my husband, how in the world did they make it through without eating their cages? But they did. And it was the week that changed the world, as you know. It was the week that changed the world. Why? Because it opened the door to China, which had been closed for so many years. And also, we actually reached across, shook hands, and started the diplomacy with China. As I said, it would have been a lot differently recorded history if China had befriended Russia, and Lord only knows what would have happened. Okay, so and a lot of you have been to China, so I think there are no pandas in China now. They're in San Diego and maybe, oh, I have to tell you one quick thing that you may not know. So I said to Xiao and Lai, I said, what would you like us to give you? He said, oh, we like oxen. We like oxen. Musk oxen. Have you ever seen a musk oxen? It's an animal that only a mother could love. It is shaggy. It is just something that, all I can say is, if you saw the picture, you'd understand. So Zhao named the male panda Milton, and his wife, that only a husband could love, was Matilda. And they lived a very long life in China, but I thought to myself, a musk oxen, Chinese zoo, oh my goodness. So it was a great trip. I'm really glad I went. It was some food that I'd never seen before, like eyeballs floating in some kind of soup, and some didn't know, but you know, as First Lady, you eat everything and you say it was delicious, and thank you. You don't want to be the ugly American. I can't taste that. I'm gluten intolerant. I'm lactose. I can't take that away. Or you just can't do that. So I don't know if an eyeball is right up there with gluten intolerance or what. But anyway, you're such a wonderful audience. I love being here. You make me feel so good, and you laugh, and you've been to all these places, and gosh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, teamwork is usually what makes a couple successful. There's so many photos of you that we've seen, you and President Nixon side by side. Can you tell us what, quote, how you worked teamwork and made it successful for you?
Well, I don't want to bore you to death with my stories, but some of them are not in the documentary, so they add a little bit of detail. So Tricia, our first daughter, was born in 1946, and I was in the hospital with her, obviously, and my brother Tom comes in the room. I have to laugh. He's here to visit the beautiful baby and to see me and give me a hug and probably a box of See's candies, which were my absolute favorite. And he started laughing because on my bed, we were right in the middle of the campaign, a 46B in Congress, were stacks and stacks and stacks of campaign material. So even when a baby's born, the campaign does not end. And all of his campaigns, as I mentioned before, and you can mention them too, I know you know this to be true, is Congress, Senate, Vice President twice, missed the presidential election in '60 with Kennedy by a thumbnail, and then was elected president in '69. So we were together the whole time. In fact, little known fact, and all of his books are in the gift shop. This gift shop is awesome. You can find out books about Pat Nixon, about the whole family, about Dick Nixon. So my husband wrote his memoirs when he was in the White House, and then he wrote 9 more books when he resigned and went to San Clemente. 9 more books. So he wrote a total of 10 books. Everything from from policy for strength with nature, with nations. He wrote a book called Leaders, on the leaders that he'd written. They're wonderful, wonderful books. But I have to tell you, in one of the books, he dedicated it to Pat, who also ran. And he didn't show it to me. He didn't show it to me at first. And so when I sat down, I opened it up, and I have to tell you, I really started tearing up because we were a team. We're really, really a team. I didn't get up in the morning and say, oh no, another day of this. I'm too tired. I have to feed the dog. I'm not going to get in my steps today. What? No. So we were really a great team. And I think in the documentary it showed too that he had a wicked sense of humor. We were married for 58 years, and he just knew when to crack a really good one. And I laugh easily, and so we took our jobs really, really seriously. But at the end of the day, we'd sit with the dogs and the kids and the everything and just say, didn't you love that cookie that lady had when we knocked on her door? I've got to get that recipe. Or, boy, that lampshade was really nice. I wonder where she got that. Just really fun things that took away from all the pressure of the campaign. So we were indeed a team,
Well, let's talk about parenting. We have a young second First Lady today, and you were a very young second First Lady. what kind of advice would you give Usha Vance today as a young politician's wife? You had young children. Julie and Tricia were young children at the time. So what can you tell her from your experience as a young politician's wife?
So first question right out of the box, how many of you are parents or have grandparents or been involved with children? Yes, I see, oh my God, so many hands. You could write a book on parenting. So when my husband was elected president, we had one Secret Service. And the Secret Service, I did not have a Secret Service assigned to me. So we had one Secret Service person come and picked up Dick in the morning and took him to his office with Secret Service. Then the Secret Service picked him up in the evening after work, and he came home, and can you imagine this? I left the front door open because he was forever forgetting his key. Can you imagine? Okay. So I would say to Usha, isn't she just a wonderful First Lady? And we're lucky she's going to have a baby. I guess this is the most historical thing in the White House, to have a vice presidential woman having a baby. This will be her 4th child. So technology has changed a lot, a lot. She will be assigned a secret person. Her husband, J.D. Vance, also. Her 3 children will not be able to play in the backyard without having a Secret Service person there in the backyard. They will, it will be very, very strict. The Secret Service security has changed a lot. What I did was I tried to keep things really the same, the structure the same. Getting up in the morning, fixing the breakfast. When they came home from school, they loved cocoa. Anybody like cocoa? 2 people. Okay, all good. So they really liked cocoa and toast, and we had a rug. It was called the cookie rug because it never showed a thing. And I didn't have any staff for helping me we had to have a lot of dinners and people over, and the rug had to be always vacuumed, but in this rug, guess what? It didn't show a thing. So we called it the cookie rug because no cookie crumbs, whatever. I had no staff to help me prepare dinners or anything. So going from one Secret Service person to a whole staff of Secret Service is going to be a little different. I think they're quite used to it, so I would say that. I would say to Usha, I should call her Mrs. Vance, First Lady, Second Lady Vance, make your structure the same as it is. Breakfast, lunch, picking up the kids, going to your kids' soccer games on the weekends, which they do, and weekends are sacred. So they go there and making it also deciding on what those 3 children are going to go to. Some things are really not appropriate. And I think the littlest one is just in her own little area. She just lies down and starts singing, or she's adorable. So I think that when some of the things are appropriate, then go. But other things, I stay home and watch what's on TV and order a pizza.
Thank you. Now, you were a politician's wife for almost 30 years. You attended so many events, innumerable events. What did you do to recharge yourself between these busy events?
Okay. So I mentioned my best friend, Helene Drown. Helene and Jack Drown were our very, very best friends. Jack was doing the whistle stops and really participating in the campaign. So Helene lived in Rolling Hills. Does anybody know where Rolling Hills, California is? Wow. Okay, because it's very remote and very tiny. So my parents, Jack and Helene, lived in Rolling Hills, and Pat obviously was in Washington, D.C. So after a really grueling campaign, which they were, Pat would fly out to be with me. And what did we do? Okay, Pat didn't have to get dressed to go to any functions, so I'm going from Pat to me, sorry. So anyway, I would just wear a bathing suit and a wet towel. That was it. And also, Helene knew that I love gardening, so she would have a plot of land all for me for the ready, and I would plant cabbages, I would plant zucchinis, tomatoes, and because I love gardening, I planted the rose. This is a rose that was named after me, and when you're so kind to have listened to all my talking, actually that rose is blooming right outside in the rose garden. So a wonderful man, a French man, actually created this for me. And so I started planting what is now called the Pat Nixon rose. Jack and Helene were so funny. We laughed. One very quick story. So the Secret Service by that time were the Secret Service. I mean, we live right across. I live right across the street from the White House, and Pat. Let's get this right. Helene lived right across the street from the fire station. So the Secret Service would be parked at the fire station. We could never get out of the driveway because the Secret Service would be tailing us every place we went. And we had to call them and tell them we're leaving now. And so they'd be, and they were very discreet. They wore a suit. Everybody recognized them. So here we are. My mom, or Pat says, Helene, let's go. Let's go on a trip and let's disguise ourselves and let's get the heck out of here. Okay, so I put on a black wig. Helene puts on she had blonde hair like mine. She puts on another wig. And we don't tell the Secret Service that we're going to go to Buffum's. I see nodding heads. Buffum's department store. Yes, because I was going to go on a trip and I needed some polyester clothes. So my mother had called, I called ahead. Helene was with me. We put the wigs on. We drove out the driveway. We went right by the Secret Service. They didn't even see us. We get to Buffum's. Okay. Wonderful sales lady named Mary had all these clothes outlined for me. They were wonderful. They were all polyester. They were all pretty, no iron for packing on those big trips. And so I have big dark glasses on. I have a black wig on. I have a ridiculous coat on. And I'm going through, and this lady is staring at me like you cannot believe. Staring to the point of where I wanted to sit down or say to her, hello, how are you? But I didn't because I'm not Pat Nixon, right? I'm in disguise. So she comes over and she says to me, you look so much like Pat Nixon. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what a lovely thing to say. How in the world she was able to do that? And so we scooted in to try on the clothes. But that was, that was one of our antics. We had a lot of fun. We had, oh my golly, those were the times that I totally recharged. Didn't have to get dressed, wear the bathing suit with a wet towel, ate whenever I wanted to, got up whenever I wanted to, didn't have to have briefings, didn't have to write 300 letters a day to my people. It was great.
Now, the term making a difference has become quite common today. But really, President Nixon was the first person to come up with that phrase, the term making a difference. So what do you feel your legacy will be today, and how did you feel that you made a difference as your time as First Lady?
Let's give Cindy a hand. Her questions are so incredibly great.
Thank you, Mrs. Nixon.
Some of these questions I have never been asked before. Okay, making a difference. How many in this room are volunteers? Stand up. Stand up. Really, stand up. Okay, we have more than half the room is standing up. Thank you so much. So as you know, you don't need to go to college to get a degree in volunteerism. You can volunteer at your church. Where do you two volunteer? Right here in the front. Where do you volunteer? At your church. The library, the bookstore, the hospital. Right here, we have the wonderful mayor. Here's right. Would you please stand up? Yes. Yes. Volunteer position. She doesn't get paid at all. And that's a lot of hard work. You know what campaigning is. Yes. Knock on the door and see who answers. Right. Okay. We hope that will happen again. So I think that the legacy is volunteerism and for sure the Girl Scouts. I was a Girl Scout leader for so many years, and Tricia was a Girl Scout. Julie was too little, but I loved being a Girl Scout leader, and I absolutely love volunteerism. And then I think that another legacy is to get involved. Just get involved. Because before you know it, if you don't get involved in something, You're going to wake up one morning and somebody's going to say, well, this and this and this happened, and you're going to go, what? What happened? So there are people who see things happen, do something about what's happening, and then there are other people who say, hey, what happened? So get involved, really get involved and do something for your, as my husband would say, for your family, for your city, for your community, and for the library too. So I think those are the things, the legacy was, and also really love your family. Some families are broken. When I was on the travels, I've heard that some families are really broken, splintered. My daughter's not talking to my son's not talking to my daughter. Some of those things are really hard to bridge. But I think if we can show the love and be role models for that and pray. I'd also like to tell you, when you asked me, Cindy, how I got through those really challenging days, I think my husband and I prayed. I think without God in our lives, we wouldn't have been able to make it. We just wouldn't. So we got up in the morning and said our morning prayers. And then before we went to bed in the evening, we said our evening prayers. We said prayers to thank God for our meals, because a lot of countries we visited, they had no food. And we were so incredibly blessed to have food. So I think really loving God and have Him guide and direct you, and learn, just be the best that you can be. And so I think that's it. Volunteerism, get involved, pray, and have fun. Have fun, laugh. It's really important to hear the sound of laughter. I love the fact that my husband made me laugh. And I think I made him laugh on a couple of times. Yeah, okay, with this, especially about the zoo and the pandas. So take what you're doing seriously, but don't take yourself that seriously. And I want to say thank you so much for being here today. And do you have one more question?
I do, actually, not a question, but I will end with a quote, which is from you. And this is you saying this, and you said, I hope that my life, even in times of great uncertainty, can stay true to our values, remain strong with our families, and always serve the country with grace, dedication, and quiet strength. I believe that is what you believe. So thank you, Mrs. Nixon, and I know that many lives, you have made a difference in so many lives. So thank you for being here today, and we just want to say God bless you, and
God bless you.
God bless our country.
Yes, thank you so much. So if you have any, first of all, was Pat Nixon's best friend. I knew the Nixons from the time that I was born until the time they died. So I was told that I'm the oldest living person, and it's such a coincidence because the library was kind enough to ask me to portray her, and I said, Pat Nixon was probably 40 pounds less than I am. But it was such an honor and privilege. I also want to thank you all. You've been so attentive and so focused, and just the most lovely, lovely audience ever. So as I can't say enough, thank you a million times, and God bless you all. And thank you so much for coming. And if you have any questions, then raise your hand. If you have any questions.
All right, well, we will take some time to do a couple of questions. Maureen and Cindy, phenomenal job. Thank you for taking us on that.
Thank you, Chris.
On that great story. I want to start off Q&A, actually, thinking this through. Richard Nixon, and Pat Nixon for that matter, the storyline is this up and down, highs and lows, starting right here. And I would argue ending right here for his funeral, where 5 presidents attended. One of those pivot points from a low to a high, I believe, is when the two of you flew back from Washington, D.C., post-presidency. The two of you had just left the White House, and you landed at El Toro Marine Base. And at the Marine Base was a massive crowd of people cheering and welcoming the two of you home. I wonder if you might take us through that experience, and then going on to spending some time at Casa Pacifica. Could you touch on that?
Sure. You know that my husband, well, first of all,
You had a question?
Let me go back. I really did believe that my husband should have burned the tapes. He did nothing wrong. And with those 10 books that he wrote, he was going to use that information from those tapes for the books. So he was going to use those tapes for research. That's why he didn't want to burn them. He thought he had done nothing wrong. He also did not want to drag our country through a trial. He said, I'm not doing that. So he resigned. I have to tell you that I cried.
We all did. We all cried.
Wow, I did. So I have to tell you that I cried because I believed in him so much, and the country needed him.
Mrs. Nixon, now that we have the audience here, I would like to mention there is a documentary that has been produced by Jeff Shepard called Watergate, Secret and Betrayal. You can actually go to the website. You can stream it for $9. It's an hour and 10 minutes, and it's worth watching.
It really is. I, unfortunately, am so old. I'm 114 years old, so I can't actually access on my computer. But going to your question, Chris, the words that I used on the plane, sitting next to my husband, when I was crying, I just said, 2 sentences. I just said, it's so sad. It's so sad. That's all I said. Because it really was. It was just so sad. And he wanted to serve his country, which he did. He started the American Cancer Society. He opened the door to China. He was in charge of the Energy Commission. Oh my gosh, so many things that he did. There's a list. And if you get a chance, there's a wonderful movie here at the library that they've done about what he's done. Or you tour the library and you just see what he's done. Because it came down to Watergate. And I'm thinking, really? Wow. It was very, very sad. Okay, so coming home, to answer your question, Yorba Linda, we actually were lucky enough to be able to be invited to a home called Casa Pacifica. Have any of you, I don't even know if you can tour that. Can you? No, you can't. Thank you. Thank you, you're really good. So you can't tour that, but it was wonderful. We were invited to stay there because my husband received no money after he left office, 0. So, a little known fact. And so we were able to stay there until some friends of my husband's got together and actually did a fundraising for him. And that's why he also wrote a lot of books, is to pay that. So, the San Clemente was notified, and it was almost like he had just been reelected president. It was absolutely incredible. There were, I would say, I think, according to the press, there were 1 million people there. With flags, with banners, with cheering, with food, they even had their little dogs dressed up with, we love Nixon, you're the best, welcome home, what can we do for you? I mean, just so many things. It was just the coming home. Thank you for that question, Chris, because the coming home was just incredible. It could have been a lot different. Could have been a lot different.
Well, we'll go to our next question. I asked because the Orange County Register was here today, and this return home is well documented by the Orange County Register. So, your question.
Well, I have 2 questions. Number 1, you talk about your dogs. And didn't you have spaniels, Cocker Spaniels? Is that your dogs?
Yes, we had a dog. Good for you. Good for you. Not a lot of people know that. We had a dog named Checkers. Really cute. And we had an Irish dog named King Tamaho, was named for one of my relatives in Ireland or something. We had 2 dogs, and then Trisha had a cat. I think the cat's name was Sasha, and Trisha wanted to have the cat have more space, and so Trisha sent the cat out to my best friend Helene in Rolling Hills. But I have to tell you one quick story. Okay, anybody have an Irish setter in this room? Irish setter. Not a lot of people have them. They're water dogs. Water dogs. So the dog was not allowed outside of the White House, but there was a fountain outside the White House, and it had water in it. And that dog absolutely was tempted beyond temptation and would run out, escape didn't have Secret Service, escaped from the White House, and would go swim in the fountain. And so when the sightseeing buses drove up, they saw King Timoho just frolicking in the fountain, and they got the biggest kick out of that. So they were fun. Did you have another question?
I did have another question. I'm from Southern California and lived down here in the 70s, and I used to ski with your nephew, Rick Nixon. And I've been to this library a couple times and inquired about where Rick Nixon is today, and nobody knows where he lives.
Nobody knows.
Donald's son, Rick Nixon, Richard Nixon.
I don't know.
You remember, I mean, you know about whom I'm speaking.
Yes. You know, because Chris is so great in the archives, maybe he could look that up for you. And if you give him your email, maybe he can get back to you.
Happy to.
Thank you for the questions.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Nixon. Mrs. Nixon, hello.
Hi, sorry.
I'm here. I have a house guest, a fellow colleague of mine, who we both worked for White House Communications. And Bill Brockett, behind me here, he was in the Oval Office. He was in videotape recording with White House Communications. He was in the Oval Office the evening that your husband addressed the nation about his resignation, and also in the office the next day when he bid his farewell with the family. And Bill, I just wanted to let you know, well, it's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah,
but,
thank you. Thank you very much.
But I just wanted to introduce Bill, and he like, you know, he goes.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for being with us. Here we go. We'll take one more. You, sir, what is your question?
Hello, Mrs. Nixon. My question is how old were you when you changed your name or applied your name, Pat?
Good question. How old was I when I changed my last name from Thelma to Pat? That is a really good question. I have to think back here. I've never been asked that question, and so I have to think back to yes, it was probably at USC. Thank you very much for the help.
I think in the archives that it mentions when you started at Fullerton Junior College that you registered your name as Patricia.
Thank you for all the help. I really appreciate this. Thank you, Cindy.
Cindy's done her research.
Cindy has done her research.
The two of you, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them another round of applause. What an incredible insight.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of your stay. Go and check out our exhibits. Our permanent galleries tell the story of Nixon in a phenomenal manner. There's also a new special exhibit dedicated to the 250th birthday of the country. It is spectacular. Please